Hello, and welcome to Library Orientation for Dissertation students at the University of the Cumberlands. Let's get started. To find library resources online, a couple of different ways. The easiest is probably to Google University of the Cumberlands Library, and you will get results that will take you to the library website. But if you want to have something bookmarked or saved, you can always go to ucumberlands.edu and find us through the academics tab here on libraries, or you could do that ucumberlands.edu/library, all of which will get you to this page here. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit for you guys. Oops, maybe not. There we go. All right, so this actually is not the page that I would save the bookmark for if I was going back to my library resources. What I would actually bookmark is what you get when you click on this blue button here, which is Research Guides / Library Resources. This box down here will connect you directly to searching the library catalog, but this guy right here takes you to a page that says welcome to the library home, and this is where a lot of our resources have been put in one place for you so you don't have to jump around. The page here has them, but you do have to do a lot of scrolling and jumping. So if you're going to bookmark anything, I'm going to throw this bookmark in the chat for you. And we will start from here. So welcome to the library. We have 4 different boxes. We have a related links box, finding resources, library hours, and staying connected. So I'll just mention a few of these very briefly. The library hours are the hours of the library building, not necessarily when staff or librarians are on call. So if you do see that we're closed, that definitely means that librarians are not in. That could be for a holiday or inclement weather or a weekend. But otherwise, if you see hours, it's likely that somebody is in and might be answering questions. You are also, of course, welcome to come to campus and visit the library, and this is when the building would be open to you. On the right here is another way to stay informed. We do have a social media presence for the library that's included in the Rollins Family Learning Center, which actually not only has the library, but also the Learning Commons, Patriot Success Center, a coffee shop, and a few other cool things like a makerspace. So this is our library account. That's where you'll see postings about new resources. For example, a new update to the qualitative research guide just got posted, Memorial Day hours, etc. So do give us a follow on there. It's a great way to stay in touch with what we might have just got subscribed to, or an event that's coming up that you might be interested in. And we'll move over to the left-hand side of the page where we have some related links. I'm not going to take a look at every single one of these, but I will highlight the ones that are important to you. So the first of those would be the Ask a Librarian link. You'll also see a chat button over here on the right-hand side. I'm just seeing in the chat, if everyone wouldn't mind muting their microphones, we might have some feedback. I'm not sure. I can't hear anything because I'm talking, but hopefully that solves the issue. I've also got a cat playing behind me, so that could be the problem. But moving right along, we have both a link that says Ask a Librarian and a library chat button. Both of these will get you library help. One is more of an email form, and one is, as it sounds like, a chat. It does have some preloaded answers for frequently asked questions. For example, finding a dissertation. We'll pull up an FAQ, and you can view the full answer, say if it was helpful or not. If it is not helpful, we'll check and see if someone is online. Right now it's 8 p.m. on a weeknight, so probably not going to have a librarian online. Generally, that's more like business hours, Monday through Friday. But in the event that no one is there, it's going to direct you straight to that Ask a Librarian form, which also lives right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and throw that in the chat for you guys as well. You don't have to save all these links, but they're there for you if you'd like. So this is our Ask a Librarian form. Pretty straightforward. Put your question here. If it's too long, you can add more detail and explanation in here. Use your UC email. This helps preventing anything from bouncing back to us when you respond, etc. Give us your full name so we know we're talking to a UC person. Select your user type. That lets us know who it might go to in terms of librarians. And it's going to ask you to do a quick math problem in which I have faith in all of you. So you'll submit your question, and then what happens is your question goes to our team of librarians. And depending on who is in the building that day or who might best have the answer to your question, one of us will claim it and we'll work on an answer and send it to you as soon as possible. Typically, questions are answered within 24 hours. The exception would be, say, if you submitted a question on a Friday afternoon and you're going straight into a weekend, or if there's a holiday, or if there's inclement weather like snow and ice and we lose internet on campus, something like that. But otherwise, questions are answered pretty quickly through the Ask a Librarian form, in addition to the chat if you're getting it on a business day, generally 9 to 5 hours. So those are two different ways to get in touch with librarians. You will also find my contact info in a couple other places as we move through the session. There we go, I wanted to get rid of him. But that's how you get in touch with us. A few other things I want to highlight on this left-hand side. Frequently asked questions. These are things that have been asked from dissertation graduate students before, so they're probably relevant to you. Perhaps the easiest way is to search for whatever you might be looking for. Say, I'm trying to find a UC dissertation. I'm going to search for dissertation and see if there's an FAQ about that. Oh, here's one. And here is the answer. And some links to look elsewhere. So do take a look at these. A lot of work is put into making them accurate for you guys, and you might learn something you don't know. Like, for example, you have access for free to Microsoft Office 365. So a lot of good stuff there in the FAQs. I will mention that this library orientation session link is for the undergraduate and master's programs. So there will be a recording on that link, but it is not the one like you'll be hearing tonight that has more information for dissertation students. I'll show you where your recording lives. You have the link actually up, the first link I gave you, but know that it's not the same as this one. This one would still be helpful, but it won't have information about things like surveys and instruments, etc. We're going to circle back around to interlibrary loan and to citation help, but know that they are here for quick access and related links. Like I said, I'm going to come back to those in a moment. We're going to jump over to the most important box, which is our Find Resources box here. You're going to see a couple of different tabs. Study room reservations isn't relevant to you guys unless you're on campus. So if you are, click on that. You can make a reservation, but otherwise I'm not going to spend time on it tonight. I will spend a lot of time on our first three tabs: UC Search, databases, and research guides. So these are all different resources that are going to help you with your research in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to briefly go over each, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how to use these things. I did not mention earlier, but if you do have a question, feel free to throw it in the chat. If it's something that I can answer right then, I will. If it's something that maybe is coming up, I might say I'm going to put it on hold and answer it in a minute. So feel free to do that if you think of a question. Otherwise, we'll get started. So we land on the UC search box. UC search is the fancy name for essentially our library catalog. And the library catalog is the collection of books or items or ebooks, videos, anything that a library owns. The catalog is sort of like a record of it. So similar to searching through a Land's End or a clothing catalog, it gives you a record of each item and more information about that item. So that's what you'll get when you'll click this UC search. It takes you right to the catalog. You land on a basic search with a box and some ways to filter your search initially. You also find two other options in the UC search tab. The first is find journals by titles. This is specifically helpful if you know what journal you're looking for and you know the title. Otherwise, not quite as helpful. What I would recommend you remembering is the research assistant at the bottom. This is a new tool that is a way to do research by using natural language, asking questions as opposed to keyword searching. So we're going to dive into it in a bit, but it is connected to the library catalog. It's just a different and exciting new way to search. So that's what lives on this tab. Right next to it is our databases A to Z tab. A database is simply a collection of organized information, and these collections of information are all academic based. Some are historical collections of newspapers, some are film databases, some are for medicine, newspapers, law, business, you name it, there's a database for it. So all of these databases are not free to the public. They are things that you pay for with your tuition. They are very expensive. And that's where you're going to find the bulk of your scholarly articles for your research. So we're going to talk a little bit more about which databases to use and how to use them in a bit, but know that this is where they live. And right over here is our research guides tab. So research guides are different than databases in that these guides were created by librarians to help you get a jump start on your research broken up by topic. So these are collections of resources. These are sort of collections of resources made by yours truly to get you started across the board. So not just scholarly articles, but books and websites and government documents, etc. So we've just landed on the art and art history research guide. You'll see you get some suggestions for top resources, which are databases like we were looking at before. You're going to get suggestions for things like articles, web pages, government documents, etc. And that's just one of the many subjects of research guides that we have here. So these are great places to land if you've gotten to the library page, you're ready to start your research, but you really don't know how. You don't remember what's here or here. The research guides are a great home base. I'm just going to give myself a moment to get a sip of water, everyone. Thank you for your patience. So that is a quick overhead look at our library page. Like I said, this is the guy I would bookmark if I were you. It's always where we're going to be making updates unless you hear otherwise. So we have our UC search in the library catalog. We have our subject databases that have articles. And we have our research guides here that are big overview introductions into topics. There is one research guide in particular that I want to draw your attention to, and that is the dissertation guide. Here it is. And let me also share that link with you all in the chat. This was made, as I said, by yours truly. So this is one of those places where you can find my contact information. Email is usually the fastest way, but my phone number is also there if it's business hours. And then on this landing page is a bunch of other sort of FAQs and direct links to resources you might need as a dissertation student doing library research. So, for example, I have a direct way to contact a librarian here. I have a way to get to our surveys and instruments tab. And I have a couple of answers to FAQs. One of those being, where can I find UC dissertation? I'm going to go ahead and answer this because it's a question that always comes up. But UC dissertations are not collected anywhere and held as like an archive. We don't have anywhere in the library we can go and search the shelves and find them. There is no digital repository where we can do a search and pull them all up. They don't live any place like that. If you want to find a UC dissertation, I would suggest contacting your program chair or your department chair. Sometimes they have access to the ones that have been submitted, but unfortunately that's not something the library has. I will show you how to look for other dissertations in ProQuest in a moment, but just know that that answer, in case you are foggy, is on your landing page here about finding dissertations. I did just see another question pop up in the chat. The library can be accessed without going through the Microsoft Authenticator. It depends. Excellent question. So this is totally fine without the Authenticator. When you're going to have to authenticate is when you get into something like a database. It's going to ask you to log in. I'm not sure if it will for me because I'm already logged in. You can see it's going through all the jazz. I've already done it once, so that's probably why I didn't have to again. But databases would be somewhere you would have to log in. And then once we get started in the library catalog, you'll be able to sign in to get a few more options to view things like online resources. So great question. All right, let's hop back over to our dissertation LibGuide. I'm going to hop off of this page and start moving down our tabs because those will be most helpful to you. So first and foremost, I mentioned that there's a different place for your dissertation orientation, and here it is on this page. The recording is from spring. I will be updating it for a summer recording because, as I mentioned before, things are always changing. So I will be posting that within the next week or two. But right now, this is the spring one, very similar to what we're doing tonight with a few updates. You can always come to a live session, or you can always go back and watch to relearn some of the things you might have got rusty on. In addition, we do have a pretty comprehensive tutorials page, so you'll see ones that are recommended for you guys here, but you'll find even more on that home page here. And they are all very recently created with the new library interface to teach you things that I'll go over tonight, but broken down into shorter increments that are a bit more digestible, if you will. So keep in mind that those are there for you, and this is where your orientation will be posted in the future. All right. So our next tab is quantitative, qualitative, and applied research. So you will be doing one of these three methods of research, I assume. And we have created guides for each of those types of research, in addition to other resources that are recommended for learning how to do that type of research. So I'll just point out that we have a link to each of the three here: quantitative, qualitative, and applied research guides. I'll show you one example of the qualitative guide. It's going to give you a general introduction to the research and then move through things like recommended search terms, recommended databases, journals, websites, and then even breaks it down into resources for your research design. So take advantage of those. Like I said, all three are linked on your dissertation guide, and all three are similar but different, of course. Applied research is a bit different than the rest. But those are going to be great places to land once you really get into the nitty-gritty. There's also a great thing called the SAGE Research Methods basis. In fact, it's on here for your convenience. For example, research about education in the Philippines or research about business. Research Methods database is a collection of books and articles, videos, tutorials about how to do research. So as you'll see, it takes a minute to load, but once it does, we get there. Looks like someone just noted that my sound was cutting out. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me? Yes. Okay, so we're all having trouble hearing me. Is that correct? Now you can hear me. Okay. If it happens again, somebody throw something in all caps in the chat. I'll try to address it. I might be looking the wrong way. Okay. So here we are in the SAGE Research Methods database in Home. You can explore things starting with books, podcasts, video, etc. Or you can search for a particular type of research. So for example, say I was looking at qualitative grounded theory. I might go here and type grounded theory. And I will find books and other resources about doing grounded theory work. Notice it's, like I said, not books about doing grounded theory work in a particular area for a particular topic. It's going to teach you how to do the research in that discipline. One other thing I'll mention about this database in particular is that it has a fun tool called the Project Planner. You'll see it's in that Tools dropdown. And this provides a general overview of all the stages of research. When we click into each stage, it gives us even more breakdowns of questions and recommended resources for that part of your research. So as you can see, the list goes on and on and on, and we have many, many tabs: research ethics, data collection. Sometimes you'll get a helpful video, sometimes, oh, great example, sometimes a podcast. But this is really something to sort of, if you need to go back and say, okay, where am I and what should I be doing? This has been recommended by your faculty, etc. Let's see. I'm seeing the audio is back now, but someone asked if anyone was from IT. If there's another issue, just, yeah, give me a shout. Please let me know. Alrighty. So that is the Research Methods Project Planner tool. Like I said, you can also search in here for books about different parts of your research. There's even these two collections called the Little Blue and Green Books collections. And they are topics related to qualitative or quantitative, depending on your method of choice. I'm just going to show you a few of the results here. One about spatial regression models, propensity score methods, things well beyond my knowledge that I'm sure all of you guys will get fun and exciting knowledge about as you go through this process. So that is our SAGE Research Methods database. It's on that qualitative, quantitative, and applied research tab on your dissertation guide. Okay, and next we're going to move to survey instruments. It's difficult to know what to call this tab because at some point you guys will be looking for some type of instrument to use in your research to collect data. And that might be called a test or a questionnaire or a measure. So a lot of different names to describe this thing you're going to have to use in your research to collect data. So this page it is a one-stop shop for all you might need as you start that search, but I'm going to walk through a couple of the things because it's definitely not intuitive. There is a video that will sort of go over what I'm about to go over right now if you need to go back. When we are looking for surveys and measures and instruments and things like that, there are a couple places that are better to do it than others. The best place is APA Site Tests, which we're going to hop into in a second because it has a collection of test records and the actual instruments to include when you're trying to apply that test. So we're going to go back to this, but I'll mention these other three options here. They're all good for one thing or another. The Mental Measurements Yearbook and Tests in Print is kind of like a consumer guide to tests, but it's primarily commercial tests. So that's all fine and good, but typically you're going to have to pay to use a commercial test, as opposed to a lot of these tests in here are going to be private and used for research. Below Mental Measurements is ProQuest Dissertations and Theses. This is an interesting place to look, not because it has a collection of tests, but because you can find dissertations that might be similar to yours and see what instrument or measurement that student might have used. If you need some inspiration, or if you're just not finding an instrument that works, you might see which ones someone else combined. So that would be something you would find in the methodology section of ProQuest. I'm going to show you a little bit more of ProQuest as promised in a bit, but that's one other place you can search indirectly. And also our Health and Psychosocial Instruments database. This is a bit newer. It does a little bit of what our top one does, except for it doesn't often include the whole instrument. So it will give you the information about something, maybe even stuff about the permissions, the test development, but not the actual test itself. So all different places that you can look for tests and instruments. I will go ahead and mention now, if you get to a place and you find a test and you say, oh, the library doesn't seem to have it, the answer is not ILL. If we don't have permission to get it, that means that you're going to have to either contact the publisher or the author for permission. It's not something that another library might have. So ILL won't work to get a test that you can't get a copy of otherwise, but there are some other things we can do to try to get a test that you can't find the PDF for. So I'll just mention that. It will come up. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me go ahead and jump right into APA Site Tests. This is our database for our tests and measures. You can also find it in our database list somewhere around here. There we are. So that's another thing you'll have to log in for. Either way, here we are. And this is a great example to start with because it is an EBSCO database. A lot of people know and recognize EBSCO, but don't know exactly what it is. EBSCO itself isn't a database, but it is sort of a platform, a provider for many of them. So not only APA Site Tests, but all of these other collections are hosted by EBSCO. So right now we're just searching an APA Site Test, but we could easily add more to search different databases. So just know if you tell me, oh, I found the article in EBSCO, that's all fine and great, but I need to know which one of all of these you found it in particular. I like EBSCO because the way it looks is very user-friendly. So that is something we do love about that platform. So with all of that being said, we're in our database to search for tests and measurements. Say we are looking for something that might explore transformational leadership. I'm going to do a quick search here. And it looks like we got 180 results. You can see some of them have the title and then PDF full text, while some have the title and check for full text. That is an important distinction. So if you only want to look for records that have the full test attached, or at least a PDF of something, you can filter to full text here. But if something does not have the PDF, that's not always the end of the road. So I'm going to show you sort of how to interpret for both. So say we're interested in this particular item. I click on the title to open up the detailed record, which gives us more details about the item in question. As you can see, all the additional information is listed here as you scroll, while the actual PDF of the item, the model itself, comes up once you click on that button. Keep in mind that this is a place where you can find more information about permissions. It looks like for this, it does give permission for use in research and teaching. And then, of course, you'll get the actual test or item or questionnaire itself. A lot of these are what you see is what you get. So if you need more instructions about how to administer the test, we're going to have to contact the author or the publisher. So let's go back. We're looking at the PDF there, but here's some more information about this test. Let's take a look at some important fields to highlight. Always great when we see that there is email information for the authors. That means that if we did want to get more in terms of instructions, we could email them, ask. It'll also give you affiliations for the authors. They might be dated, but hopefully are usually still in date. You'll see email or correspondence that will have information for contacting the authors. Another important field is our permissions field. As you saw, we saw a more detailed version in the PDF, but basically it says may use for research or teaching. That's the best case scenario. You might also see contact author or contact publisher, in which case you would need to contact whoever is listed and ask for permission to use the item. And if there's not a PDF, you might also ask, can I also have a copy of this test? In this case, we don't technically have to do that because we have permission and the test items are available. It also gives some information about reliability and validity, which you will need to discuss. And something called the source citation. So this guy is essentially the article that published either the original test or published information about using the test itself. So as you can see, it's a citation. We have the author name, the date, the article title, the publication, which is the journal, volume, pages, and the DOI. So that's all the information that we use to find a thing. So if you want to read more about this test development, we would want to see if we can get our hands on this article. I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And that's when we would go into what I talked about in the very beginning called our UC search or library catalog. This is a record of everything that the University of the Cumberlands has access to. So in theory, if you were to search the title and we have access to that item, you will see it in here. It looks like there are some close matches, but not exact matches in here. So that might be a case where we would use interlibrary loan, which means we ask another institution if we can borrow the article. But that's what our source citation is. It's going to help you understand the test and talk about its development. So if you have trouble finding that article, just shoot me an email and we'll get a hold of it for you. So important things to keep in mind for a test record. Does it have a PDF? Is there contact information for the author? Do I have permission to use it? Is there a fee? That's very important, right? And are the test items available? Like I said, cannot do interlibrary loan for these. So for example, if we decided instead we'd like to use this guy, We'll scroll down and we notice, oh good, there is an email. But for permission, excuse me, we do have to contact the corresponding author. So we're going to have to email the author and ask if we have permission to use this test. And look, it also says the test items aren't available. So we're going to have to also ask if we can see a copy of the test items when we shoot that email to the author here. So really all contingent upon if the author responds or not. You'll notice that when you do this button check for full text, it sounds very convincing and exciting, but usually it's going to take you to our catalog and say, oh, we don't have it, it's gray. Sign in to get some options. This is very misleading because when you sign in, it then tells you to use interlibrary loan, which I told you you can't do for surveys, and you now know, so you will not be tricked. But that's what this box is about. So if it takes you here, you're not going to find it through this box. You will have to find it by emailing the author or the publisher. I see a great question in the chat. What is the turnaround time when requesting an article using interlibrary loan? So any article we have access to at the Cumberlands, you find it, you click, you go to wherever the full text is linked, and you have the article. If UC does not have the article and you want to get it anyway, we go to interlibrary loan, which is back on that home page here. I'm also going to copy the URL for you guys. And distinction, this is only for items that UC does not have access to. So we divide it up into articles, book chapters or essays, and book loans. So the fastest form of an ILL is going to be a article or a book chapter or essay request, because that gets sent digitally as a PDF, as opposed to an entire book, which is going to come in this snail mail. And not only that, but it has to go to the University of the Cumberland, and then it has to go to you guys. So by the time you get it and have to send it back, it's not much time. So what I suggest is if you can get your hands on the table of contents and get a chapter that you need as opposed to an entire book, that's always the best way to do it. So as you can see for articles, it says 2 to 5 business days, same for book chapters and essays, a couple of weeks for actual books themselves. ILL is completely free, unless you do something like lose a book, then we might run into some replacement fees. So that's interlibrary loan. You'll notice that there is a little box for requesting surveys. As I said before, a lot of people get confused when they get that interlibrary loan box for a survey. So this is sort of to direct you back to me. But that is a situation where you would use interlibrary loan. So we are going to go back to the catalog here and talk more. I know we've been bouncing to it back and forth, but we will get there. Let's see, we were back on our survey searching. So we had talked about what to do if we see that the item is not available. We would end up emailing the author. So these searches aren't always fun, but if you're not having any luck, remember you can always go back and search in our ProQuest dissertations and theses database and see what others might have been using. I think this is a good time to hop into that database. So I'm going to go ahead and click into here. As you can see, it looks a little bit different than the other one. So this is a unique database in that it specializes in dissertations and theses as opposed to peer-reviewed articles. So note, dissertations and theses are not peer-reviewed. They have not undergone the process where experts review and verify the research. These are things like you guys are publishing, which might get turned into a publication, but right now it's just a dissertation or a thesis. You can find ones published by UC students in here. However, UC doesn't require students to upload them, so it's not a comprehensive collection. So if you wanted to do that, you can always just search by topic here or name. But if you click our advanced search, you'll find a little university institution box, just to make sure we get the exact right thing. I always like to look up Cumberland's. Click our little checkbox here. It says we have 212 results. We're going to add that to our search and see what we get here. So as you can see, we're getting a couple on blockchain and more cybersecurity, longitudinal. So different topics. You might also add something like education, just see if you can get a little bit more focused. But that's how one would go about finding a dissertation, unless you're going to your department chair or program chair to see if they actually have an archive of previously submitted dissertations. So here we're scrolling through, and what I was mentioning is that if you're looking for a instrument, most dissertations from the Cumberlands and other places, chapter 3 will be your methodology chapter, and I'm trying to find, there it is. This one, let's see, starts on 83. So we might go down and see what instrument they might have used, and then see if we can find that instrument in something like this database. So great place to look at sort of samples at what other folks have used. If you have any questions as you're looking for surveys, there are some step-by-step tutorials. So if you get to a test in here and you say, oh, I forgot what I'm supposed to do now, this document walks you through it. If you need to find articles to validate your survey instrument, here's a little step-by-step for that. And then here's a link to directly ask a survey question and put you in touch with me, because some of these things are just tricky. You might have trouble finding the publisher information or the author contact, or maybe the author has passed away. All kinds of things happen. So feel free to give me a shout and we will tackle it together. Whew, so that's survey instruments. That's a lot. Always remember you can go back and watch this tutorial to get a refresher, and contact me if you need to. I'm going to hop off of survey instruments and we're back to our library homepage. I'm going to keep trucking along because we are 45 minutes into our time and I do want to leave time at the end for questions. So what we're going to do now is get into some searching techniques. What I've shown you up till now are some very specific places to look for specific types of information. But we are going to jump to our library catalog, which you've gotten a preview of, also known as UC Search. And we'll notice we land on a page that has one box for searching. That's called our basic search or keyword search. I'm going to show you what it looks like when we do a search here, and we're going to take a look at housing development. All right, so lay of the land. We've searched up here. We haven't put on any filters yet, so it's giving us everything that matches. So that's a big number of results, as you can see up here. We have different types of items. We have journals. You can see this little icon here. We have books. We'll see the cover. Articles have our little page flippy here. And then it gives you a little information about each item. So the title, which if you click will give you more information. It tells you if it's peer-reviewed. This was not always the case. We love this guy. Available online, etc. Before I click into an item, let's just take a look at other ways you can filter. So the most user-friendly is probably up here. You can change all of your items to articles, for example. And it narrows our results down quite significantly. Our left-hand side always also gives you some limiting options. So a lot of you guys are not in the library on campus. You might want to say, I'd like only online things that are also peer-reviewed. I'm going to apply the filters, and it cuts our results again almost in. Other fun and exciting filters. You're published. A lot of you will be wanting to limit your research to things published within the last 5 years, sometimes 3, sometimes 10. It really depends on your discipline. I don't know the exact answers, so don't quote me on that. But you will not want things from, for example, 1901, unless they're what we call seminal research, which means it's a foundational work that you always go back to and cite in a particular discipline. For example, if you're going back and citing Aristotle, obviously that's not within the last 5 years, but if it has bearings on your research, you can use it. Seminal works is what that's called. But in this case, I probably want to keep things from 2020 to now. We're going to go ahead and refine and look at that over half cut again. Other things that might be helpful to you, language. Some subjects will have things that are more dominant in some languages than others. For example, theology has a lot of German. So if you're wanting to get rid of those results, you can limit to, for example, just English. Takes us down a little bit more. And we could even go and look at what subjects are assigned to the different resources. So as you can see, a lot in these categories, maybe not so much in these. And we get left with our list here. We ended up with about 18,000 results. I'm going to go ahead and click into one to show you what it looks like. We click on the title to open up the detailed record. It's going to give you information like this peer review, open access, available online, more details, and even subjects, sort of like tags. So say, oh, I really did want more resources about informal housing. You could click there and it would take you to a search for that. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to go back. Let's click into here. Sorry, this is a different item, but same idea. You'll notice a couple of helpful icons below. Permalink is something you should know and love. If you're trying to share a resource online, a lot of folks are tempted to copy this guy up here. But if you see a long, confusing, and terrible URL like this, do not use it. What you want to use is this nice thing called a permalink, which is a short little link in comparison to that, right? That will not rot, which is they call link rot. It's this thing where links sort of die or they don't go to the right place anymore. You'll get that 401 link is broken error or whatever that is. So this is a good way to share resources either for yourself to go back to or to share with your professor or with me. Always use that permalink instead of copying whatever's in your search bar. It's going to look a little bit different in every database, but typically has something like a link for a chain. And there is also a citation button. We'll talk about citation in just a hot second. I want to point out here that you can choose the different styles. You'll probably be using APA, and you can copy it right to your clipboard. One thing to keep in mind about citation software in general is that it is not human. So there are mistakes. Even if it was human, there would be mistakes too, right? So review all of your citations, even if you are using something like Zotero or EndNote or Mendeley, or even just this. Take a look and see, okay, is this actually supposed to be italicized? Am I missing anything, etc.? I don't go over using citation management software, but we do have some great folks who do, and they are the Learning Commons. So back on our library page, you'll see our citation help page here. And this is going to give you links to a lot of the style guides and programs that help you with that particular style. But it also spells out where to get help with actual writing of and formulating of citations. So that's the friendly folks, the Learning Commons. They've got numbers for graduates and undergraduates. They have a really fantastic website that lays out their services. They even have a graduate writing center where you can connect and set up an appointment or submit work for review. So keep these folks in mind. They are great people to know. and their info is right here on citation. If you need to get in touch with them, please do. So that's my quick little citation blurb. Start using software now rather than later if you do decide to do that, and be consistent is all I would advise. Alrighty. So we were back in our library catalog. We had looked at this item. Anytime something is an online item, you'll see this here, and you'll see a place that says view online and full text availability. What you see below is not always going to be the same. In fact, you might have one option or 3 or 4 or 5 options. That just means that this item lives in a bunch of different places, or it's in one place. In this case, this article lives in the directory of open access journals. So to get to the thing itself, we simply click. It might make us log in depending on where we are. And here we are on the journal landing page. No, thank you. Let me do another example just to show you how different things can look. Let's try this guy. And we have full text from 2 different places. So we have both our EBSCO databases, which we love, Academic Search Complete and Business Source Premier. Let's try Business Source and see how that looks. And here we are, we land on the article. Most articles are going to have your title. They should have your authors with their information, in addition to an abstract, which is like a summary. Great way to see if an article is actually going to be relevant to your research or not. Helpful keywords, so you know how are other folks talking about this topic. And then your introduction, figures, and so on. What I want to scroll down and make sure you pay attention to is what comes at the very end, which are the references. So if you find an article that's very relevant to your research, chances are the research that that author did is going to be helpful for you as well. So I always recommend reading through the bibliography, or if not, just skimming it to see if there's maybe a journal that you didn't know existed that you'd like to search, or if there's an article in particular that you'd like to see if we own. Sometimes these things will be directly linked, not all the time. So if I wanted to see if in fact we owned, let's see, this article, Air Quality and Early Life Mortality, Indonesia's Wildfires, go back to our library catalog, copy, fix some formatting. Oh, look at that. We do own this article. So then I would click in here and see, okay, it lives in JSTOR and it lives in Project Muse. And here we are at that article. I will mention this, you might end up using JSTOR, it's for the humanities typically. If this pops up at you, it doesn't mean that you need to enter your UC information again. This is an account that sort of stores your searches and your history only in this database, so it can be helpful, but you don't have to do it. And it will go away once you lose access to the database. So you can X out of that whenever you see it. But here we've landed on another journal article page. It gives us the information, even breaks down some of the sections. And we can scroll through here. So that's what I call capitalizing on research, is looking at what the author is citing in other research that you're reading, and using those resources as well. For a lot of you, you're going to have upwards of 100 some resources, so it's a great way to work smarter, not harder, if you will. Okie doke. I want to find a book just to show you how that might look a little bit different. So we're going to try something completely different. Let's look at business. and see if we can't tweak it down to books. Aha. So here are a couple of book availabilities. We have one online. Here's one in the main collection. So if you see something that you like from the main collection, shoot us an email and we can see if either it can be shipped to you or scanned. But most of the stuff you guys need is typically available online. That's why we buy it online, because we know it's for you guys. So let's take a look at this title. Very similar to an article. It will do things like sometimes break down chapters, which can be helpful. Like I said, if you're doing interlibrary loan, you can get a chapter copy a lot faster than a whole book. So otherwise, where were we? Here. Otherwise, a book record looks very similar and even can have multiple places to access it like before. So I'm going to try EBSCOhost here. Woohoo! Here we are, obviously a little bit different than an article. Some books will let you do an entire book download. Some will let you download a particular number of pages, like this one has a 100-page limit. But a lot of them you can just access as ebooks online. So that's how a book looks a little bit different. A lot of books will let you search in them. So if I knew I was looking for a particular subject in here, I could click search this ebook and type in, gosh, I really don't know what, money. Oh, look, it does mention money once. So sort of like a very advanced index for you. But that's how a book online would look. And don't rule out books. They can also lead you in their references to more research. They're also great ways to get introduced to a topic that maybe you don't know exactly how to talk about with the vocabulary, etc. All right, so those are records for books and articles. You might find other things like newspapers, videos. It should be self-explanatory, clicking into the title and then accessing the resource itself. I want to talk about a few search strategies. A lot of people will ask me, like, are there like secret codes for searching? And there's nothing like a fun Mission Impossible, like enter code and you'll get all your research. But there are a few tips and tricks that we have to help you out. I mentioned before that we land on a keyword search box here, but you can choose to do an advanced search, which we've seen already. I think it looks complicated in here and I don't love it. For example, as a contrast, if I went back into here and typed, let's see, that's in Australia. If I went into here, sorry, what was I just trying to show you guys? Yes, I was trying to show you what the advanced search looks like. There we go. So I think this is a little bit cleaner, but it is available in the catalog. Like I said, the catalog is a record of everything we own, whether that's articles, books, videos, etc. Our databases are also things we own, but they're filtered by subject or collection and primarily scholarly articles or research articles, peer-reviewed articles. That means these things have been vetted by other scholars in the field. So here is our advanced search box, and it's advanced because it gives you multiple fields which are connected by what we call Boolean operators, also known as Boolean logic. So basically a fancy word to say we're using and, or, and not to connect terms in our search and strategically combine or not combine them. For example, we might be looking at resources. Let's see, what collection? We're looking at books. Let's change what we're searching here. Let's instead go to Academic Search Complete, which is a very general database. And we're going to look at livestock We get 161,000 when we search this way. If we went to our advanced search, we could add an and to increase our results. This works a lot if you have something like a synonym. So livestock, or sorry, not a synonym, that would be our or. For and, we're using things to make a subject more complicated, like livestock and sustainability. So let's see what that does to our search. We get 4,000. So and is going to tell the system we need both of these things, therefore we get fewer results. It's a way to make our results more specific. Opposite, or is used to expand our results. So for example, we were looking at that same topic, but instead of just livestock, we might also consider looking for cattle, or another synonym for livestock, which could be farming. Let's try farm animals and see what we get. So or increases our results and decreases them. You want to remember it, or is more. And finally, not is not always helpful, no pun intended, but it is there. What this does is it excludes a term or maybe a subset of a term that you're not looking for. Say, for example, we're looking at music therapy, but we specifically do not want to look at preschool. We want to look at everything above preschool. We can use that not to clarify. So let's take a look and see here. 8,000 results. Let's play around a little bit. If we wanted to look at music music therapy, not preschool, but we wanted to expand our search with an or, we could use one of these guys, or, no pun intended, we can add an or right in our field here, and as you've probably seen already, it gives us little suggestions. So it knows that if you're looking for music therapy, you might also be looking for these keywords. So now we can combine those, give it more options, and say not preschool. And we increase our results and even get some Greek, if I'm not mistaken, from my seminary work. So searches can get pretty complicated in Boolean searching. There are three more things that you can do in your search to refine it that I'll mention before showing you something that's completely different and perhaps more user-friendly. So we talked about doing the advanced search, combining with Booleans. You can also do things within the words themselves. So for example, say I'm looking for resources on servant leadership. If I search just servant leadership here, I'm getting 1,549 results. And sometimes we're getting just leadership. A lot of times it's staying together. To adjust my search, I can, one, add quotation marks around both words, which is going to keep them together. You might also do something like that if you were looking at environmental justice, if you didn't want to find resources on environment and resources on justice. We could put those two together. And this works not only in this database, but also in Google, in the library catalog. These strategies work everywhere, in theory. Two other things are called truncation and wildcard. So truncation is when we acknowledge that we might find search results for a topic with the root of a word that has possible endings that are different. So, for example, if I was looking at that servant leadership again, I might find resources that match that. But what if there are resources that talk about servant leaders or a servant leader or just leading? The way to tell the system that we'll take anything is to put a little asterisk at the end of the word where it could be cut off and made other words. And that tells the system we'll take servant leadership, but also leaders or lead or leading. You could do the same thing with something like music. So music, musical, musician, any word that's got multiple endings that are going to be relevant for your research. That's what we call truncation. And finally, wildcard. This means that there's a word, or sorry, there's a letter in the middle of a word that you're unsure of the spelling of or could have multiple spellings. So for example, if I'm looking for a work by Albert Smith, but I can't remember if it's Smith or Smith, I could put either the pound sign, hashtag, or a question mark. Different systems have different symbols, so try both if you're not sure. And that tells the system I'll take either option, Smith with an I or a Y. It helps with things like British spellings. So, you know, those Brits spell it color. So if we wanted to find color or color, we could do a color. Oops. Or, ooh, I can't type in front of people. Or color. Or we could just put a little wildcard in here and search that way. Truncation and wildcard are a little bit more refined for keyword searching, but they can help. They can and do help. You've probably seen in EBSCO and perhaps other databases that we've got a little suggestion every now and again for natural language searching. Natural language searching is exactly what it sounds like. It's searching for things using the language we would naturally ask questions in. So for example, I might ask Siri, who played Joey in Friends? If I was looking up that same topic in a library database, I would be forced to do something like, maybe we could look up Joey and Friends or like the producer of the show. Whereas in natural language, I could say something like, who played Joey and Friends? So with academic research, we now have the options to do both. So there is the traditional search, which I just showed you, but there's also something called Research Assistant. Here it is. You can also find a link to it here, or if you're directly in the catalog, it's at the top here, or typically on the side. I think it's on the side once you start searching. Let's see. Here we are. So it can also pop up here. Let's hop over to it. So as you can see, it is a way for you to ask research questions and explore topics without those pesky keywords and Booleans and all that jazz. So it gives you samples for different types of questions. It's going to give you information about how to use it. And it's honestly very user-friendly, that's the point. And it helps you find articles that otherwise would be pretty difficult to find. So let me show you what I mean. If I am looking for what are the long-term effects of pollution on swamps. You can tell I have a big science background. All right, so what it's going to do is take a look at our catalog, and it's going to search for the 5 most relevant resources it thinks to answer this question. So it's giving us all 5 resources here, all links to the library catalog, giving us more search results, an overview of the results with little numbers that bring you directly back to the source it's citing, and related research questions. So this is basically a safe version of ChatGPT for you to use because it's always going to be real resources. ChatGPT is really good at making up theoretical resources that sound real but aren't. So for example, if you click on this guy, it's real title, it gives you the journal information, even the abstract, and you can go right to the full text online. Up here, like I search results, and see what else it's hitting. Take a look at what it's doing up here. It took your natural question and it put it into this Boolean searching, but look how complicated it is. So that's what it's doing, is taking the work out of putting these complex Boolean phrases together and answering your question this way. It's a really cool tool. I would suggest asking the same question in a different types of ways to get different results. And I would suggest not just using this or just using the catalog, but certainly using a combination of the two. Let's see. And like I said, that will pop up when you're in the catalog or when you're on our library page here, our research assistant. Whew, okay, it's 9:12. I know that was a lot to throw at you. It's a short session with a lot of stuff. That's why we record it. And that's why we have our library tutorial videos. If anybody has any questions right now that they want to either throw in the chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself, I'd be happy to take them. I know you also might need some time to process, so if you want to think about how this applies to your own research and then get back to me, you know where to find me. You can always ask a librarian here, or you can go to your handy dandy guide, like Dissertation, and find me directly here. So go for it if anybody has any questions. Happy to help. Otherwise, I'm glad you attended and got this information to get a jump start on your research.